Well, good afternoon, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, boys and goyim. This is Vince Burt of the 11th Hour Remnant Messenger, the Church of Jesus Christ Christian. We are an evangelical outreach of the True Church of Israel that caters to, panders to, and brings the message to our white kindred throughout the United States and indeed the world. Today, as promised in my prior video presentations, I'm going to talk to you about Jeremiah, the prophet, and his mission to tear down and build and plant, which the church is totally ignorant on today. And we're going to talk about the stone of stone, the stone of destiny, also called Jacob's pillar or Jacob's pillow. Now, the Irish pretty much know who they are. As a matter of fact, there's an album out that was recorded probably some 10 years ago by an Irish singer named Steve MacDonald. You'll see that the title of the album is something called the Stone of Destiny. Well, the Stone of Destiny in the Gaelic is called Leofail, and the person who brought it to Ireland is a man by the name of Jeremiah, who the Irish at that time called Olam Fala. And he brought his scribe with him. Of course, we knew his scribe from biblical times as Baruch, and they called him Bra. Anyway, along with bringing his scribe, he took Teotaphne, which was one of Zedekiah's daughters, into Ireland at the time. It wasn't called Ireland then, and married him into the royal line which had existed there for several hundred years, believe it or not. And these were white kindred Israelites who had departed either from the Egyptian captivity or the Assyrian captivity 200 years before the Babylonian captivity, which is where Jeremiah comes on the scene in the Bible. So, we're going to talk first about Jeremiah, and then we're going to move into the Stone of Destiny, which is a very important message, not only to the church, but to we white Christian, Adamite, Hebrew, Israelite peoples, because it reinforces the fact of who we are, where we came from. And this cannot be denied by the Jewish imposters who run about the world with as small a population as they are, who have dominated the world and convinced the world and the church that they are indeed the chosen of God, his peculiar people, when indeed we white Hebrew Adamite Israelites are. So without belaboring this any further, first I'm going to read from a nice sermon of Bertrand Comparet. He is an icon in Christian identity. He was a Supreme Court justice for many years in the state of California. He came to embrace the Christian identity message as the true message of the Bible, the message of the way of Jesus Christ, Yeshua Yahweh, our Savior and Redeemer. And we needed both. We needed a Savior and a Redeemer. First to bring us back into the fold because of Adam's sin, and secondly because Yahweh had issued us a bill of divorce. And if you need more information on that, you can go to the book of Hosea, which explains that very clearly. Okay, what did Jeremiah really plant? One of the greatest figures in history is the prophet Jeremiah. Yahweh commissioned him to carry out a double task. We are told in Jeremiah 1:10, "See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms to root out and pull down and to destroy and to throw down, to build and plant." His rooting out and throwing down was completed when Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian army finished the deportation of the kingdom of Judah to Babylon. Its last traces being thrown down when the murder of Governor Gedaliah was followed by the flight of the survivors to Egypt, compelling Jeremiah to accompany them despite his warning against this. What and where did he plant? Historically, the Bible doesn't tell us anything, as it mentions him at Tahpanhes in Egypt. Just as Jeremiah had warned the people of Judah and Jerusalem not to rebel against Babylon, so had Ezekiel at Babylon given the same warning. He gave the parable of the great eagle which cropped off the top twigs of the cedar tree, which is an emblem of Judah's royal family, carried it to Babylon and planted it where it became a low vine. But another eagle came along and the vine grew towards him. Ezekiel says the first eagle is Nebuchadnezzar and the second is Pharaoh of Egypt. Ezekiel then warns of punishment for breaking the covenant to be a vassal of Babylon. Then, in contrast to what the eagles have done, Yahweh says what he will do. Ezekiel 17:22 and 23 records, "Thus saith Yahweh, I will also take of the highest branch of the high cedar and will set it. I will crop off from the top of his young twigs a tender one, and will plant it upon a high mountain and eminent. In the mountain of the height of Israel will I plant it, and it shall bring forth boughs and bear fruit, and be a goodly cedar, and under it shall dwell all fowl of every wing. In the shadow of the branches thereof they may dwell." Feminine words are used for young twigs, a tender one, though masculine words could have served just as well. Numbers 27 and 8 tells us how Nebuchadnezzar killed all the sons of Judah, thinking this destroyed the royal family. However, under Israel law, when there were no sons, the inheritance went to the daughters. Jeremiah chapters 33 and 34 record that he, with his scribe Baruch, and the king's daughters were taken by the remnant of the people to Tahpanhes in Egypt. There he warned them that they were all doomed except those that could possibly escape from Egypt. This escape is the only possible fulfillment of Yahweh's prophecy that Jeremiah would build and plant. Churches which like to call Jeremiah the prophet of doom have created the fable that he died in Egypt. By this they accuse Yahweh of failure and falsehood, for Jeremiah could only build and plant as Yahweh prophesied after leaving Egypt. So let us see what Jeremiah built and planted and where he did it all. The king's daughters were the tender twigs which Yahweh said he would plant. Where could Jeremiah have taken them? Remember, it must be a great Israel nation, in the mountain in the height of Israel. He did not take them to Babylon, where the people of Judah were captives. This would have been recorded by Ezekiel and Daniel if that would have happened. He would not have been allowed to take them through the Babylonian Empire, where the 10 northern tribes of Israel were by this time known as the Scythians. The record is clear that he did not take them back to the old kingdom of Judah to stay, though he probably stopped off there long enough to pick up the Ark of the Covenant and Jacob's pillow, the stone of destiny, which had been hidden from the Babylonians. And where else were there Israelite kingdoms? They were in Greece, they were in Spain, and they were in Ireland. Historians agree that Greece was a barbarous nation until a high civilization was brought there by settlers who had come from Egypt but were not Egyptians, being aliens expelled by the Egyptians. These are the Danoi, seafarers of the tribe of Dan, who had left Egypt by sea. The date is approximately the same as the exodus of Israel from Egypt. Also, near this date, Ireland had been conquered by a highly civilized invader who came by the sea, Tuatha De Danann, or another part of the tribe of Dan, who ruled Ireland for about 200 years thereafter. Another Hebrew migration from Egypt was half of the royal tribe of Judah. This tribe consisted of 2 branches, respectively, the descendants of Pharez and Terah. These were the sons of Judah. The Zerahites, were men of great ability, even Solomon being compared to them in wisdom. The Pharez branch was considered the older, hence entitled to preference as the royal line. So the Zerahites sought other lands where their ability might seek its own level. They settled in Crete, also founding the cities of Troy and Miletus. After the fall of Troy, somewhere near 1000 BC, Brutus the Trojan and his followers went to England, founding what became known as the City of London. Miletus became a great power. Milesian coins bore the Lion of Judah, and Milesian mercenary troops were hired by Egypt as the chief border guards. Milesians from Spain, with a considerable fleet and army, conquered the Tuatha De Danann in Ireland and settled in Ireland, where Milesian civilization lasted as long as Ireland remained independent. Their language was Phoenician, which is a Semitic dialect akin to Hebrew, and became the Gaelic language of ancient Ireland and Scotland, which even today is nearly identical with the Phoenician. The Irish Chronicles also record that the Milesians introduced the laws of Moses, which remain Irish law until the time of St. Patrick. Ancient Irish history records that about 583 BC there came to Ireland from Egypt Olam Falla, which means the great prophet, with Bru his scribe and Tia Taffy the daughter of a king. Irish tradition has always identified Olam Falla as the prophet Jeremiah. Bru his scribe is of course Baruch, mentioned in the Bible as Jeremiah's scribe. Now, even today, in the 20th century, and this is 2012, you can go outside of the Supreme Court in Ireland and you will see a statue of Jeremiah, the great prophet of old, the biblical prophet. Near Jeremiah's tomb in Ireland is a stone inscribed with hieroglyphics which show a star formation which could have only been seen about 583 BC, which was the time of Jeremiah's migration from Egypt. While the Bible records the capture of the Ark of the Covenant by the Philistines, it does not mention its capture by Babylon. Although it does mention their looting the golden vessels of the temple, we may be sure that the ark was safely hidden. Some today say it's in Ethiopia, some today say it's buried under Golgotha and the blood of Jesus had to fall on it. Some say it's buried in the walled city of Jerusalem. Some say it went with Jeremiah to Ireland. We will never know until that great day when Jesus Christ returns in power and great glory, where all of these remnants of the sacred articles are. In taking the king's daughter on a divinely commanded mission to build and plant, Jeremiah would naturally try to take along the remaining sacred objects. While there is no positive record of his taking the ark, the Irish Chronicles do record him bringing the Stone of Destiny, Jacob's pillow. From Ireland, it is historically traced through Scotland to England, where it is now in the coronation chair in Westminster Abbey. And I'm going to take a minute to show you a depiction of what that might look like. And you'll see the Stone of Scone underneath. Now, just for your edification, once again, I'm going to give you an actual photograph of this Stone of Scone. And then I'm going to give you a brief explanation. Here you have it. It's approximately 4 feet long, 1.5 feet high, and probably 1.5 feet wide. It weighs upwards of 100 pounds. Now this stone was a stone that was carried through the wanderings by Moses, and when Jesus, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, when Jesus or Yahweh God told Moses to speak to the rock to bring forth water, this is the rock that he was to speak to, which did bring forth living water, which is a type and shadow of Jesus Christ. Now later, Moses was commanded, the first time he was commanded to strike the rock, the second time he was commanded to speak to the rock. And it turns out that the Bible gives us an indication fairly clear that because Moses disobeyed Yahweh God and struck the rock the second time, he was forbidden to enter the land of Canaan after the wanderings, but that's another story for another time. Anyway, the Princess Tia Taffy, brought to Ireland by Jeremiah, is undoubtedly the daughter of King Zedekiah of Judah. She was married to Eochaid the Harriman, or the chief king of Ireland, who was of the Milesian dynasty and therefore of the Zerah branch of the royal tribe of Judah. So the two branches of the royal tribe were now united in the royal family, ruling the free half of Judah. As Yahweh said to Jeremiah, he would clip off a tender twig from the highest twigs of the great cedar tree of Judah and plant it in the mountain of the height of Israel, which was fulfilled by this royal marriage. Jeremiah was a prophet of doom only to the Palestinian kingdom of Judah, and his prophecies were entirely accurate. But this is not the end, for Yahweh said, "See, I have this day set thee over the nations and over the kingdoms, to root out, pull down, and to destroy and to throw down, but also to build and plant." Having finished the rooting out and throwing down, Jeremiah went on to build and plant in Ireland, where Yahweh's people Israel had established a high civilization, just as Yahweh had prophesied. Now, we're going to talk about the Stone of Destiny. In the coronation chair in Westminster Abbey in London, England, is an oblong block of sandstone, upon which of all England's kings have been crowned for several centuries. Before that, the kings of Scotland, and before that, the kings of Ireland were also crowned on this stone. This is another bit of evidence and piece of the puzzle that proves the identity of the Anglo-Saxon people as the Israel peoples of the Bible, and that the house of David still rules over them. This fulfills the prophecy that David would never lack a seed to rule over the house of Israel until Yeshua Yahweh comes to take the crown himself. The history of the stone begins in Genesis 28, 17 and 19, where we read that Jacob camped overnight in a field and for his pillow used a stone with his cloak over it. During the night, Yahweh appeared to him in a vision and promised to give him the land of Canaan. When Jacob awoke, he said, "This is the house of Yahweh," and named the place Bethel, meaning the house of Yahweh. Then he took the stone he had used as his pillow, set it up as a monument, and dedicated it with an offering of oil, the only inanimate object in the Bible that was ever dedicated and anointed with oil. He promised that if Yahweh would help him, then shall Yahweh be my God, and this stone which I have set for a monument shall be Yahweh's house. In Genesis chapter 35, Yahweh instructs Jacob to go back to Bethel and set up an altar to him, which Jacob did. It was at this time that Yahweh changed Jacob's name to Israel, and then Israel set up and dedicated as a monument of witness the stone pillar which he had dedicated as Yahweh's house. Its sacred character was now firmly established. We next find mention of the stone in Genesis chapter 49, when the aged Israel, Jacob Israel, before he dies, tells his 12 sons what will befall their respective descendants in the last days. Speaking of Joseph, he says, "From thence is the shepherd of the stone of Israel." We should therefore expect to find the stone in the custody of Joseph in the last days. The English are the tribe of Ephraim, descended from one of Joseph's sons. Its sacred character having been established, the stone would not be thereafter abandoned. We next hear of it when the children of Israel in their exodus from Egypt were facing death by thirst in the desert. Yahweh instructed Moses, "I will stand before thee upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink." They were thus saved from death. This miracle was repeated later, but this time Moses was instructed to merely speak to the rock, not strike it. Because Moses disobeyed Yahweh and hit the rock in a grandstand play before the people, he was not allowed to enter into the promised land. We must not think that this rock was merely from the native rock cliffs of the desert places. In 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 4, Paul records, "All our fathers were under the cloud, passed through the sea, and did all drink of the same spiritual rock." or drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. They were given water to drink from a rock which was carried along with them. As Jacob had said, this stone that I have set up for a monument shall be Yahweh's house. So Yahweh hallowed it with his presence. After Joshua had conquered the promised land and divided it among the 12 tribes, he reminded them that they must be ever loyal to Yahweh, and he set up a stone as a monument of a witness to this warning. The Hebrew says he took the stone of greatness, and what would be, or what more fitting witness could there be, but the stone which was Yahweh's house. Recorded in Judges 9:6, before Yahweh ever allowed Israel to have a king, the rebel Abimelech had himself crowned king beside this pillar or monument. Later, when the lawful monarchy was established in the house of David, we find it was the custom that the king be crowned standing by the pillar or monument. We read in 2 Kings 11:12 through 14, and he brought forth the king's son and put the crown upon him and gave him the testimony. And they made him king and anointed him, and they clapped their hands and said, God save the king. And when Athaliah heard the noise, the guard and the people, she came to the house into the temple of Yahweh. And when she looked, behold, the king stood by a pillar, as the manner was, and the princes and the trumpeters, by the king, and all the people of the land rejoiced. The stone had become a sacred relic, a witness of the mutual promises of Yahweh and the children of Israel. It would be found close to the temple and the throne. Upon the fall of Jerusalem to the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, in 2 Maccabees 2:4 through 8, says that the ancient record stated that Jeremiah had taken the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle and hidden them in a cave on Mount Nebo. And then, while in 1 Samuel 4 and 5 records the capture of the ark by the Philistines and its return, there is no mention of it being taken by the Babylonians. So the ancient record of the ark being hidden must be correct. Along with the ark, we may be sure that Jeremiah would also safely hide the sacred witness stone, Yahweh's house, which had been twice used to give water to the people to save them from death, and which was now used in the coronation of the kings. I told you how Jeremiah and the daughters of the last king of Judah, Zedekiah, were taken to Egypt with the refugees in order to fulfill Yahweh's prophecy that Jeremiah was also to build and plant. Jeremiah had to leave Egypt and take the princesses to where another Israelite kingdom was then in existence in Ireland. We know that with Jeremiah went Baruch his scribe and the king's daughter Tiataphi. With the princess he would also certainly take the hidden stone upon which the kings were crowned. The ancient Irish records record the coming of the great prophet Jeremiah, Baruch his scribe, obviously Baruch, and the daughter of a king about 583 BC, which would be the correct date. With them they brought the wonderful stone, or the stone of destiny, the stone of scone, Jacob's pillar, and Tiataphi, the king's daughter, married Eochid the Herriman, the chief of a king of Ireland. The stone, called Leophale, or stone of destiny, was kept at the capital city of Tara for some 3 centuries until it was sent to Scotland for the coronation of Fergus, the king of Scots, who was a descendant of the Milesian kings of Israel. And we already know that they were the ancient Phoenicians. It remained in Scotland, and all Scottish kings were crowned on it until 1297 AD. At that time, King Edward I of England invaded Scotland and captured the stone, which he took to England, where it was placed in Westminster Abbey, its home ever since that date. However, since then, it has moved to Scotland, and Scotland loaned it back to England. It was built into the coronation chair, the oldest piece of furniture in England, still serving its original purpose. All English kings have been crowned on it ever since. Its origin has been well known during the entire time it has been in the British Isles, and from practically the first it was called Jacob's Stone. William of Wrestlanger, writing in the 13th century, records the coronation of John de Balliol as King of Scotland in the year 1292 AD, upon the stone which Jacob placed his head. The 10-tribe nation of Israel had to abide many days without a king, as Yahweh prophesied in Hosea 3:4. However, there must always be a royal family of David's line on the throne over some Israelite people. Yahweh promised in Jeremiah 33:17, David shall never lack a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. We know that Eochaid the Herriman was one of the Milesian line of kings of Ireland, and that the Milesians in Ireland were descendants of Zerah, a son of Judah. Tiatafi was a descendant of David, who was also of the royal tribe of Judah, through Judah's other son, Pharez. So the two royal lines of Judah were united with the marriage of Eochaid and Tiatafi, and a descendant of David was always on the throne over Israelite peoples, as Yahweh has promised us. The Ark of the Covenant belonged in the temple. The temple was not to be a continuous institution like the throne of David. The throne was to be a continuous throne, as promised in Jeremiah 33:17. Therefore, it is only logical that the coronation stone, which the Hebrews had called the stone of majesty and the pillar of witness, should be found where the throne of David has its continued existence. After all, it was the pillar of witness, for it had been made witness to both Israel's promise to be Yahweh's people and Yahweh's promise to be their God, our God. It should be there as a witness that Yahweh always makes good his promises, and David shall never lack a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. And with that, I'm going to close this for the moment and do part 2.